Welcome to the Nexus Grant Application Information Session. The Nexus Grant is a program of the Economic Development Department's Cultural Arts Division. The Economic Development Department oversees initiatives to assist with the development of creative industries in Austin and support the community's unique cultural identity and vitality. This information session will provide details about the Nexus grant. The grant is funded through the hotel occupancy tax. All grants are funded with the hotel occupancy tax revenue are required to culminate in a public activity that is open and advertised to Austin residents, visitors, and tourists, promote and enhance Austin as a city that is a cultural destination, and occur in Austin or its extraterritorial jurisdiction, also known as the ETJ. Next slide. During this webinar, we will review the Nexus program highlights, the applicant eligibility, eligible activities and expenses, the Nexus application, the application review process, and information on how to apply and receive additional application assistance. Next slide. Nexus program highlights. Next slide. The Nexus program is designed to nurture new and emerging applicants in Austin's creative community. Funds support arts and cultural activities of all kinds. Nexus will prioritize applicants who are economically disadvantaged. This may include applicants who are economically disadvantaged because of their status as a veteran or applicants who have suffered the effects of discriminatory practices. Applicants who have never received City of Austin Cultural Funding Awards in the last 5 years, 100 awards of $5,000 will be awarded. The number of awards is not a limit and is subject to the availability of funds. Next slide. What is new for FY 2025 Nexus grant? The FY 2025 application is different from previous Nexus iterations of Nexus. Nexus application is moving from a biannual launch schedule to an annual launch cycle. With this, the awardees will have up to 12 months to complete their activities and spend the funds as opposed to the previous 6-month contract period. Long answer narrative questions have been removed from the Nexus application and replaced with 10 multiple choice questions and 2 short answer questions. Some of the work samples can also provide additional points. The FY25 Nexus application is multiple choice. Scoring will be facilitated by auto calculations in the submittable platform, cultural funding staff, and our third-party administrators, the Long Center. The top 100 scoring applications will be selected for awards. To align with the practices of other auto-scored applications, in our department, the Nexus scoring rubric and review forms will not be made available to applicants this round. Next slide. Let's discuss the applicant's eligibility. Next slide. To be eligible to apply for this funding opportunity, applicants must be a 501c nonprofit arts organization, an individual artist over the age of 18, or a creative business. All applicants must have an annual expenses of $150,000 or less, must be headquartered in Austin Metropolitan Statistical Area, or MSA, have a minimum of 1 year creative production in Austin. The proposed activities must be compliant with the Hotel Occupancy Tax HOT statute. HOT funded activities are required to be open and advertised to Austin residents and tourists and must promote and enhance Austin as a cultural destination and occur in Austin or its extraterritorial jurisdiction, or ETJ. Individual artists and creative businesses may apply directly or with a fiscal sponsor. Applicants cannot accept more than 1 grant award per City of Austin fiscal year from Elevate, Thrive, Nexus, and the Live Music Fund. This means that if you accept an award in Nexus, you will not be eligible to apply for the Live Music Fund or Elevate grants opening later this year. Applicants also cannot be full-time City of Austin employees. Next slide. If applying with a fiscal sponsor, you must secure your fiscal sponsor before you start your application. You will not be able to change your application to include a fiscal sponsor after it has been submitted. The fiscal sponsor will create the application on behalf of the sponsored project. Once the fiscal sponsor starts the application, they can invite the sponsored project as a collaborator to edit the application form and provide the appropriate responses based on the sponsored project's proposed activity and production history. The fiscal sponsor and sponsored project must complete and sign the sponsorship agreement. This should be uploaded as a required document. The template for the sponsorship agreement can be found within the Nexus application on Submittable. Fiscal sponsorship fees cannot exceed 10% of the award amount. The fiscal sponsor must hit the submit button on behalf of the sponsored project to submit the application. We recommend that fiscal sponsors set an earlier application deadline for their sponsored projects to ensure that the fiscal sponsor has time to review the application prior to clicking the submit button. Please see the Long Center or Create Austin's guide to using fiscal sponsors for more information about applying with a fiscal sponsor. Next slide. Now let's discuss eligible activities and expenses. The Nexus grant can be used to fund a variety of public activities. Eligible activities include exhibitions. For example, visual art shows, film screenings, festivals, or panel discussions related to arts and culture. Performances, for example, theatrical productions, dance performances, spoken word events, and live music performances. Arts and culture-related workshops, classes and camps that culminate in a public performance or exhibition. Public art projects installed on public or private property, accessible to all. Ticketed events are welcome as long as tickets can be purchased by the general public. Next slide. Activities that are not eligible for this grant include activities occurring outside of the Austin council districts or Austin's ETJs. For example, events occurring at venues located in Cedar Park, Round Rock, or Georgetown, as well as other Central Texas cities besides Austin, would not be eligible. Activities that are not accessible to tourists, like performances in public school assemblies or private members-only events, would not be eligible. Fundraisers, benefits, or activities offered for the sole purpose of raising money in excess of the value of programs or services delivered. Proposals that do not include a public event, for example, proposals to purchase equipment or activities like filming and editing without a public presentation component, are not allowed. Activities that occur outside of the contract period of May 1st, 2025 through April 30th of 2026. Please note that this is not an exhaustive list of ineligible activities. Please review the Nexus grant guidelines on our website for more information on acceptable uses of these grant funds. Next slide. The Nexus awards are $5,000. Applicants do not need to submit a project budget with their application. However, if awarded, grantees will be required to fill out a project budget as part of their pre-contract materials, demonstrating how they will use the funds. We go ahead and advance the slide, Peggy. If awarded, applicants can choose to decline any portion of the funds that they do not need. Eligible project costs include payments to people, including project administrators and artists, and we strongly encourage applicants to pay all who work on the project an equitable wage. Venue and space rental, marketing expenses, equipment rental, insurance, and most production-related expenses for public events. Next slide. Ineligible project costs include, but may not be limited to, donations or regranting of the grant funds. The purchase of equipment, however, equipment rental is allowed. Expenses paid more than 60 days before the start of the contract or after the end of the contract. Food and hospitality expenses that are not pre-approved by city staff. Expenses related to starting a new business entity is not allowed, including registering your business as an LLC or applying to the IRS to become a 501c nonprofit. Please note that this is not an exhaustive list of ineligible expenses. Please review the program guidelines for more information on acceptable uses of these grant funds. Next slide. Next, we will go over the Nexus application. When you first open the Nexus application, you will complete a short eligibility quiz. If you are deemed eligible for the grant opportunity, you will be taken directly to the full application. If you are not eligible, you will not move on to the full application. If you receive an ineligible message and think you filled out the form incorrectly, use the provided link on the page to take you back to the home page where you can begin again. If you have any questions on the eligibility guidelines, please reach out to culturalarts@austintexas.gov. Next slide. In section 1, you will complete the contact and activity information with your artist, creative business, or nonprofit organization information. In section 2, you will be asked a series of voluntary demographic information questions that are required by the Economic Development Department. All questions require a response, but there is an option to select prefer not to answer if you do not want to provide this data. Next slide. Section 3 in the application is not scored, but will be used to verify eligibility of the applicant and proposed activity for the Nexus grant. If the question, or in the question asking about your proposed event, please make sure you are providing the proposed dates, the venues, and venues for your activity. If your event is not an eligible activity or is not hot statute compliant, your application may be deemed ineligible and you will not move forward to scoring. It is okay for your event dates and venues to not be confirmed. Enter your ideal event dates and venues in the application. Be as specific as possible. Listing summer 2025 is not specific enough. Please provide at least the month and the year for your proposed public activity. Additionally, listing a venue in East Austin would not be considered specific. You must provide at least one venue name and its address. If awarded, you will have the opportunity to provide updated event dates and venues as your project plans become finalized. Next slide. You will need to upload the following documents to the Nexus application. At least one work sample must demonstrate the applicant has been doing work in Austin for at least a year prior to application deadline. The work sample can include an artist CV, a past flyer with social post with dates that include the year and venue, links to past events, including Facebook and Eventbrite event pages, program materials, etc. Work sample must include the year and venue and is required but is not scored, and it's only used to verify your eligibility. The second work sample that demonstrates the applicant's past work. The work sample could include images, links to audio video files that are less than 5 minutes total, writing samples, etc. This is optional and is not scored. The third work sample demonstrates that the applicant has hosted events in an Austin qualified census tract. See the glossary in the guidelines. Or applicant has received a quote or initiated a conversation to reserve a venue within a qualified census tract. Work sample could include a flyer with the venue name, invoice from a past event, or email with the venue, etc. For podcasts, you could provide an invoice for your current recording location. This work sample is optional, and if provided, the applicant may receive up to 5 points. Number 4, the fourth work sample, will demonstrate the applicant has previously provided expanded ADA services and/or has previously provided accommodations for non-English speaking communities. The work sample could include a flyer or social media advertising services from past events on an invoice from a service provider or a letter from a community member who has utilized services provided by the grantee. This work sample is also optional, and if provided, the applicant may receive up to 5 points. Next slide. Additional required uploads for nonprofit, fiscal sponsor, and sponsored project applicants. An IRS determination letter of the nonprofit or the fiscal sponsor is required. The most recent 990 of the nonprofit applicant or the fiscal sponsor is required. If you do not have a 990 or a 990 EZ, you can submit your most recent financial statement. Sponsored projects will need to also upload a signed sponsorship agreement. A template is provided and will need to be filled out and signed by both the sponsored project and the fiscal sponsor. Next slide. Section 5 is where you will respond to the scored program questions. The Nexus application is comprised of 10 multiple choice questions and 2 questions that require you to enter a full address. The Nexus application has 95 possible points, as well as the opportunity to receive up to 10 bonus points from optional work samples. Next slide. Let's move on to the application review process. Next slide. Applicants will be auto-scored. Our applications will be auto-scored and reviewed by program staff and third-party administrators. Applications that meet the requirements outlined in the guidelines and receive the highest scores will be recommended for funding. The number of awards that are approved is subject to the availability of funds, and we expect to award approximately 100 grants per cycle. All awarding decisions are final and are not eligible to be appealed. Next slide. How to apply and get application assistance. Next slide. To apply, you must visit www.austintexas.gov/nexus. On our website, you will find the Nexus guidelines, a preview of application questions, the application link, instructions to get started and submittable, and information on how to get help. Nexus applications must be received through the submittable application platform. Paper and emailed applications will not be accepted. Applications submitted after 7 p.m. Central Time on March 6th, 2025 will not be accepted. Next slide. The Nexus application opens Tuesday, January 28th at 10 a.m. Central Time. Applications are due on Thursday, March 6th by 7 p.m. Central Time via the online submittable application. City staff will review eligibility and applications will be scored throughout March and April, and awards will be announced by mid-April. There are several opportunities to receive application support throughout the application period, including a Nexus information session presented in Spanish at the Spicewood Springs Library at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday, January 25th, and Ask Me Anything, a program, a Q&A at the Zapata Library on Thursday, February 6th at 6:30 p.m., and the Nexus grant from draft to done at the DeWitty Job Training Center, where you can use the computer lab to submit your Nexus application with program staff available on site to assist you with any questions you have as you work on your application. Open office hours will be held every Tuesday between January 28th and March 1st from 10 a.m. to noon, as well as from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on the application due date, Thursday, March 6th. Next slide. Thank you for your time and participation. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact any member of the Cultural Arts Funding team. For technical support, please contact the Long Center. You can also find more information about this and other Cultural Arts Division programs at www.austincreates.com.